Hey, John Ferguson Smart here. I wanted to talk about the different phases or stages of testing that you see people talking about on a lot of LinkedIn posts. Very classic. You start with the unit testing phase, then you have the integration testing phase, then you have the system testing phase and the UAT testing phase and so forth. There are variations. But what I wanted to say is that that's rubbish. That's not how it should work in an Agile project. Stop thinking of phases of testing. Stop thinking of unit testing as something you do after development, as integration testing as something you do after your unit testing. No, that's not how it works. If you want to test efficiently, the way you should be testing is using an outside-in approach. An outside-in approach, or this is in my experience at least, the best way I find development is you start with your acceptance criteria, what will give you confidence that your system does what it's supposed to do. You including negative cases, positive and negative cases, and then you work inwards. Okay, I've got my acceptance criteria. I've got an acceptance criteria working with some positives and negatives. But to get that working, or rather I've got it doesn't work yet, to get that working, what lower level components do I need to model out, to implement, to make work? And then I might have an API level, or a component, or a Spring service, or a UI component, or a React component, whatever. It doesn't matter. At different levels, you have different things you need to do, and that narrows down your focus, and you end up describing behavior in a more narrow focused area. Now, when you describe that behavior, you implement that as a test. Is it a unit test? Is it an integration test? Is it a end-to-end test? I don't care. I don't care what you call it. You can do whatever is the most efficient technique for you to test that behavior. And you might do what you'll traditionally call a unit testing technique, and then straight away do an integration testing technique, then switch back to unit testing for another acceptance criteria or another behavior. You use what works the best for a particular context in a particular situation, and you use it at the time you need it, when you're mapping out, when you're speccing out the behaviors of your system as you go down. So this is effectively what we might call an ATDD or a TDD approach, a test first approach if you like, but really I'm more interested in describing the behavior of the system at each level as you go down and getting confidence that it does what I expect. And this approach means that you don't over test, you don't get too many tests, but you get enough tests to give you confidence, because you go to the level that you need to have confidence that your system works, and you stop. And it works and you're good. So you won't get to the point where you're trying to write unit tests for getters, because there will be no point, no behavior that would justify writing a unit test for a getter, for example. You typically will be modeling behaviors without diving too far into the implementation. So this is a nice way to make your tests much more effective as well. So this approach really only works if you use a proper BDD then TDD, what I call outside-in development approach. But when you nail that, when you do that well, it really is a game changer. So give it a go and let me know what you think.